In today's history video, we'll go over the months of January and February of the year 2018, covering the entire 3rd year anniversary. So stick around as we unravel Toshi's last mistake. The year of 2018 started with a New Year trophy card. Kimono 18 was actually pretty decent for a free card. She had a decent support type buff, given 1 key and 20% attack and defense to the whole rotation, had a Nuken passive, gaining 8% attack per key spheres obtained, add that to her supreme damage multiplier, and yeah, she could do some decent damage for a support type unit. And she was also a great fit on Super Sentry Gotenks team, because the fact that she only gave 1 key meant that it was easier for him to hit his Elven key super attack. And she also shared the Innocent Link with him, giving him some more attack. But honestly, who cares about all that? Like, this has to be one of the best card art in the game. I might honestly have to do a card art tier list at some point. Like, we'll see, but just look at that. 4 days later, and it was already time for some new weekend missions. It's just so interesting to me that those missions not only got better with time, but the art also changed. Like going from Goten in Trunks to Super Saiyan Gotenks to Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, like that's just so cool. The next week, and yeah, Vegito was coming to JP. He couldn't become an LR yet, but his TOR was still pretty okay at the time. Like he could stack attack and defense on Super and had 60% attack and defense at the start of turn. From what I could gather, I think that for the most part people were very disappointed by his TOR on Global. Like people were so pessimistic. They generally had nothing good to say about him. Like people expected his LR to be absolute garbage. And I think it's mostly due to the fact that he was like LR Vegito Blue. Like people expected LR Vegito Blue to be an absolute monster. Just for context, this is what some guy thought was the bare minimum he should look like as an LR. Like bro, this would have been the best unit in the game up until the 6th year anniversary. Like what even the frick is that? Like people's expectations were just way too high, which led to obvious disappointment. Another week later, and they added some more items to the Baba shop. Those are the items that they added, but the interesting part is that they also removed items from the Baba shop rotation. Items that according to their data were very rarely bought. So this was actually an all-around pretty decent change. 4 days later, and it was already time for the countdown celebration for the 3rd year anniversary. And it looked like it was going to be themed around the Namek saga. Well, at least that's what the countdown images were pointing towards. But you already know that's absolutely not what happened. The celebration had your typical SNS campaign and ticket summon banner. A banner that had every LR up until the most recent one featured on the banner. I'm sure a lot of people managed to pull LR's per Century Goku from that banner, which was obviously insane at the time. They also said that starting from that day, they released some details about the anniversary every day on their website, up until the start of the anniversary. And originally I was actually about to tell you that I couldn't find anything about it, but then I just had this absolute like gigabrain idea of putting those links into the Wayback Machine. And some goats actually did make captures of the Dokkan website during that period, so you can actually see what those details were. And guess what? It was actually nothing. As far as I know, they actually just dropped like random facts about random characters and some videos that are private now, but by looking at the thumbnails, it didn't look like anything crazy. 2 days later, and they released the update 3.10.1. This is the update that made it possible to see the hidden potential percentage of a unit directly from the character's detail screen. Apparently this wasn't something we could do before. No idea how I never noticed that, but yeah. Just look, you couldn't see it at the time. This update also added the puzzle authentication thing, I guess as a way to counter bots, but I don't think that helped. I actually remember using a bot back in the days to reroll like a JP account during their 5th year anniversary, and sure, it slowed you down like a little bit, but that was it. As a matter of fact, I still have the codes of the accounts I rerolled, but as far as I know, I actually don't think we can use them anymore. Those accounts are just unfortunately gone forever. A couple of days later, and it was finally time for the 3rd year anniversary. This was around the time where I first started the game on Global. Well, technically I first downloaded the game back in March 2018, went to the summon tab, saw that the current headliner was Frieza, did a multi-summon, got shafted, and then the game looked just too complicated for me, so I just uninstalled it and then later came back in July. I was playing a lot of Blazing at the time, and if I remember it correctly, they completely killed the game at the end of that summer. Like the anniversary banners were just so trash. They removed the PD and lowered the rates.
I don't know, man. I don't even know right now because the rates are so bad. 0.33% rate to pull the Naruto or the Sasuke. That is LR trash rates, bro. Like,
and I obviously got shafted, so I just went all in on Dokkan during the Worldwide celebration. Anyways, coming back to the 3rd year anniversary, the campaign started with their typical anniversary stuff, and they actually updated the website with some new commercials. Unfortunately, those videos are also private, but the funny thing to me is that the anniversary headliners had absolutely nothing to do with the team, and the team had nothing to do with the commercials. Like, everything was all over the place. The anniversary was just so weird, as you'll see. They dropped a new event where you could get anniversary coins every day. I looked at my box to see if I still had any of those coins, but no, I actually used them all. I still have some tickets though, but those coins were just way too good to not use, especially if you're a new player at the time. I spent them all on Kai's potential orbs, and as bad as it sounds, awakening medals. I didn't understand anything about the game at first, like I didn't know what links and leader skills were, so I just couldn't beat like any type of Dokkan events, so I just bought the medals from the shop. The crazy thing about that event though is that it came with daily missions that gave you 1 team cost every day. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the only time in the history of the game where they did something like that. Like, 1 team cost every day. That's so interesting and was actually insane for a new player like me. We also had a 3rd year anniversary trophy card, which actually wasn't even that bad at the time. Like, this was genuinely a card you could use if you're a new player. But like a dumbass, bro, I just didn't know anything about the hidden potential system. Actually, I think I didn't even have it unlocked at the time, so I just fed all the copies they gave us into his super attack level, and I'm pretty sure at the time they only gave you like 5 copies of the anniversary units, so I couldn't rainbow him until like the next anniversary. They also released a buffed support type item that anniversary, the battle suit armor. I don't know why, but in my memories, that item was absolutely cracked, giving you 12 ki and like 90% damage reduction, but it actually just gave you 4 ki and 20% damage reduction for 3 turns, which is actually kind of busted. Like, I'm sure that item was very good in Super Battle Road. Like, 4 ki and 20% damage reduction for 3 turns, that's low-key kind of crazy. This is also the anniversary that introduced the Porunga Dragon Balls. I still remember my wishes to this day. I took the train items one like 3 times because I just didn't have any of those train items as a new player. The support item one once and actually instantly regretted it because I then figured out that the best wishes were the potential orb one and Kai one. I think I even got like the incredible gems one, which wasn't half bad. Like, I think I didn't regret that wish. But yeah, all around, those wishes were actually pretty crazy for the time. The missions were also not half bad. The daily missions give you an additional stone and 2 tickets every day, and the other missions gave you 50 stones in total as well as 10 anniversary coins. They also held a stamina campaign where players would get rewards depending on the amount of stamina they used. They even kept track of the stamina bar on their website, and the rewards were pretty insane. It gave you copies of a Namek Saga Goku, and the final step gave everyone 30 stones. And bro, that Goku was actually a pretty decent card. His leader skill was decent if you were a new player. He raised his defense by 30% for 3 turns on super, which was also good. Raised his attack and defense by up to 120%. The less HP he had, the greater the boost. So deep into a fight, he could actually get pretty tanky. And the craziest thing he had was a free Senzu, when below 10% HP. Like, from what I could remember, this was hard to see, but not as hard as it would be nowadays. Like, I remember that Senzu saving me like a time or 2 back then. But this wasn't the only Fridge Play unit they gave that anniversary. We also had a Fridge Play Strength Gohan, who was after his EZA seen as the best Fridge Play unit in the game. But I don't remember how good he was before his EZA, but if we look at his kit, he probably was quite decent. Like a nuker with a supreme damage multiplier as a Fridge Play unit was actually quite something. They also held a Twitter campaign where players just had to tweet with a specific hashtag. The rewards were also pretty decent. Like, in total it gave everyone 33 stones and 3 Elder Kais. I also think that this was the first anniversary with like an in-game promo video, right? Like, let's just play it for the sake of nostalgia. this has to be one of the best ones, right? But with the Purunga at the end, I would really have thought that the headliners were going to be from the Planet Namek saga. Yeah, I guess Toshi had other plans in mind. 2 days later, and they teased the anniversary headliners, who dropped the same day. And yeah, it was a double Goku and Vegeta anniversary. Who would have thought? Like, what the hell, bro? The countdown images were about the Planet Namek saga. The theme looked like it was going to be centered around it, with maybe like a little bit of like a Super Saiyan tree here and there. And then you look at the headliners, and it's just Goku and Vegeta. But what probably caught everyone off guard was the fact that they were LRs, but not any LRs, transforming LRs. Because yes, those 2 guys introduced a new mechanic, where units could transform when certain conditions were met. And those guys transformed into Gogeta and Vegito. So yeah, once people saw that, and how cracked those LRs were, yeah, I'm sure they all forgot about the whole Planet Namek saga team, you know? And just sounded like crazy. In base, they both had the same kit. They just had different leader skills, and slightly different link sets. In Super Vegito led the Potara category for Tricky, 70% HP and attack, and 130% defense. And the In type for Tricky and 90% HP attack and defense. And Physical Super Gogeta led the Fusion category and the Physical type for the same stat buffs. Obviously those 2 categories were pretty cracked at the time if you had like all of the premium units, but from what I could remember, Super Vegito's team was just way better. Like that Potara team was genuinely insane at the time. One of the best teams Dokkan had ever known. You legit just couldn't die. You had 10 billion HP, held every turn with the Zamasus, and did a billion damage with the Vegitos. It single-handedly turned Bus Rush event into a complete joke. Like, their kits were extremely simple, but at the same time very OP. They both didn't have like any special effect on their 12 key, but both raised their attack for 1 turn on their 18 key, which was actually quite significant because of their stats. Those guys' base stats were just so high, especially Vegito's defense. Like, it was out of this world. And then you looked at their kits, and they had an insane 120% attack and defense at the start of turn. 120% attack and defense with those LR stats meant that they were just so tanky. This just made them the best age and anniversary units of all time. Like, they were still usable up until the 7th year anniversary. It was just like crazy. And they also gained an additional 2 key per Rainbow Key Spheres obtained, which actually helped them a lot, because their link sets weren't the best, at least before they transformed. So that key was very helpful, and an insane ability to have on LRs. But obviously the juicy part was their transformations. They could transform after their 6th turn once you dropped below 50% HP. Like, the condition wasn't great, and you barely saw them transform at the time, but the transformations were absolutely cracked. And another reason why these guys aged so well. They both healed you back to full HP, which was insane, especially in the Legendary Goku event that came the next year. They had an even bigger start of turn buff of 150% attack and defense, so they were pretty much untouchable now, and they also gained 3 key per key spheres obtained. But that's also where they shafted Gogeta quite badly. While Vegito could raise all allies attack by 30% on his 18 key and freaking counter, Gogeta only lowered the enemy's attack and defense by 30%, which was practically useless by the time you got him out, and was only super effective against all types. Like, I genuinely don't understand how Toshi thought that super effective against all types was equal to counters. Bro, Super Vegito had like double the APT of Gogeta with like 3 counters, even though Gogeta had a much higher base attack stat. Like, they really fumbled. Obviously they were both still insane, but Vegeta was just miles better. The fact that he did more damage than Gogeta, while also having more defense due to his higher base defensive stat, was just so unfair. Like, you could clearly see that Toshi preferred Vegito over Gogeta, but at least their animations were phenomenal at the time. Like, I still remember looking at their animations and being so amazed at how good they looked. Obviously, unfortunately, like, they didn't age that well, as I'm pretty sure Agel Metal Cooler dropped like the next year, and that guy just changed everything when it came to Dokkan animations. Also, from what I could remember, their Dokkan events were pretty hard if you were a new player. Like, they just had so much HP. But I'm sure that they were some of the easiest ones if you were playing for some time and had the right monotype leaders. As for their banners, they were actually pretty good. They both introduced 4 new characters that were actually not bad. Agel's Percent 2 Angel Goku was probably the best one. He greatly raised his defense for 1 turn on Super, was an orb changer, gained 12% attack per Agel Key Spheres obtained, but most importantly, healed 5000 HP per Agel Key Spheres obtained. Like, that healing was just so insane. And he could also tank pretty well post Super, so yeah, he was just insane as a floater. His Vegeta counterpart was also pretty good. He was like a more offensive version of Goku, greatly raising his attack on Super for 1 turn, and gaining 12% attack and defense per Strength Key Spheres obtained. Honestly, I don't remember using him as much as Goku, since he kind of lacked like utility. Like, sure, he could orb orb change, but those orbs only gave him stats, which weren't that high anyways. If he healed like Goku, that would have been like a different story. Tech Kaioken Goku stacked attack on Super, which was decent, gained 70% attack and defense on Super, and an additional 5 ki and 50% attack when below 50% HP. Like, he was actually pretty good, and since he had Over and a Flash, he linked pretty well on pretty much every Monotech team, since they were all led by Over and a Flash units. Physical Vegeta was also quite decent. He stacked defense on Super, and had the same passive as his Goku counterpart. It's just that he gave himself defense instead of attack, when below 50% HP. Like, he could genuinely get pretty tanky after a couple of Supers, even in Super Battle Road, and unlike the other cards we mentioned, this guy had a farmable super attack, being the Strike Event Vegeta. His link set was pretty bad though, especially on a monophysical team. A thing worth pointing out about those 4 units is that they all had mini gods leaders, so they were actually very helpful for newer players or just for people who didn't have all of the gods leaders. Now, coming back to their banners. Gogeta's banner featured all of the Dokkan Fest Gogetas and Janembas. Text percent for Gogeta, Strength Janemba, and In Super Gogeta were all phenomenal, especially In Super Gogeta. He was still seen by many players as one of the best TURs in the game, if not the best one. Text percent for Gogeta was also crazy good, especially with the release of Super Battle Road. And Strength Gogeta was also still viable as a leader if you're a new player. The Janembas unfortunately didn't have any categories at the time, and the game was slowly but surely phasing out monotype teams. So yeah, like Strength Janemba was good, he just didn't have a category. And in Janemba, like, bro, this guy would have probably still not been that great even if he had a category. Like, he aged out. Vegito's banner featured all of the Dokkan Fest Vegitos and the In Dokkan Fest Boos. Obviously all of the Vegitos were still crazy, but the craziest part is that the oldest one was arguably the best one here. Not at the time exactly, but as soon as the first category Super Battle Road stages dropped, yeah, there was generally no reason for you to run physical Super Vegito over the AGL one. Like, he was way better defensively, and it took way too long for physical Super Vegito to start actually doing damage there. So yeah, it wasn't worth the defensive trade-off. The Boos were still decent, they were in a better state than the Janembas for sure. Like, they at least had a category, with Kid Buu having 2 at the time. This anniversary also had your typical God Stones. With the purple stone, you were now able to pick a Neo Gods leader, which was definitely not bad if you were a Pain player. And the red stone had 7 new characters, with the Easies and Strength Percent 3 Vegeta definitely being the best option there. But we still didn't know what the other Easies could look like at the time, so taking the characters you were missing was definitely not a bad choice either. Now, before we move on, just keep in mind that this was pretty much the peak of the anniversary. Like, I don't know what happened afterwards, but the second part of the celebration, it has to be one of the worst part 2 I've ever seen in a 3-year-old gacha game, especially like a successful one like Dokkan. Like, the previous year of Dokkan was just so crazy. It's still seen by many players as the golden era or golden age of the game. But yeah, obviously the game hit top grossing the next day, like, of course. And finally Toshi gave players some stones. 50 dragon stones, 33 tickets, and 33 coins. So far those were like the best top grossing rewards they had ever given, I think. Could be wrong there. Now, in the following days, all they did basically was just re-release the monotype support type banners. Like, bro, for 14 days, all we got is some old monotype banners. Like, legit, no new content, nothing. Just your daily Porunga Dragon Ball and monotype banners. I guess they announced the easy of the Free Play Strength Gohan in the meantime, which was a hype-ish, like the first ever Free Play easy. This opened up the door to so many possibilities, which was pretty exciting. And the easier rewards were also pretty decent at the time. Like, people were expecting a full 30 stones and tons of hidden potential orbs and Elder Eyes from that Free Play easy. But yeah, that was it. Just one announcement in 14 days during an anniversary. The anniversary of one of the biggest gacha games at the time. Just absolute craziness. But you know what the craziest part was? Is that those monotypes banners actually got top grossing. Like, that's just crazy. How did that even happen? Oh yeah, I remember. That first multi gave a disgusting amount of potential orbs.
You do one multi for the, I think it's 2 other Kais per multi, or is it just one? Either 1 or 2 other Kais per multi. You get 3,333 orbs between the large, medium, and small. That makes up 3,333. So you don't get 3,333 large or 3,333 medium. You get 3,333 orbs, you know, from the large, medium, and small that makes up that amount. So yeah, it's a one-time deal.
So yeah, I guess they were must summons. But it was only the first multi that gave potential orbs. So I don't know. But what I know is what Toshi gave players for that second top grossing. 33 tickets and 30 diamond Hercule statues. So basically 33 SRs and some Zeni. Fun fact actually, but this is the anniversary that introduced the diamond Hercule statues. This was their first appearance as far as I know. Now, at the same time, they announced the second part of the anniversary. exactly. The driest part 2 of any celebration ever. You know what's the content we got in the second part of the celebration? The free-to-play easy of Gohan. And that was it. Like, that was literally it. I guess they announced that they were going to release legendary summon banners for the 5 OG LRs, which was cool for those who never got one, but that was it. Like, that that was literally it. And you know what the worst part was? Strength Gohan Easy had 77 stages and gave 0 stones. Like, it only gave potential orbs, and not even that many. Like, it literally just gave you 1,440 small orbs, 1,085 medium orbs, and 104 big orbs. Like, you couldn't even rainbow a unit of each type with those orbs. I guess it did give you 11 Kais, but 7 of them were for the strength type, so you couldn't do much with like 1 Elder Kai for the other types. Like, I still remember my disappointment clearing that first stage for the first time and just seeing the rewards being potential orbs. Like, I was so sad because I thought that like every easiest gave stones, you know, and the other ones were just so difficult that I couldn't even get past the like 15th stage, and I needed those stones for like a multi. Like, sure, I still had the stones from the quest mode, but those were just so boring and like tedious to farm. But still, yeah. At least Strength Easy Gohan was good, like very good. He actually introduced the Planet Namek Saga category into the game, a category that was actually very bad at the time. But with the introduction of the Ginyu Force free-to-play units, that guy was now the best leader for Super Strike events. He also raised all allies attack by 20% on Super for 1 turn, which was good, and now gained 13% attack and defense per key spheres obtained, with an additional 7% attack and 2 key per rainbow key spheres obtained. That key was low-key useful since that guy didn't have like the best link set, but yeah, those stats were actually quite decent since he had very good post-easy stats for a free-to-play unit. And I think I forgot to mention it, but this guy was fully farmable for free. Like, his event gave you his own type of potential orbs. The grind was obviously very tedious, but worth it. The next week, they teased a new event, which was basically just the free-to-play Ginyu Force. They started to roll out the next week. They each had their own stage where you could farm them and their potential orbs. Birder was available Monday, Guldo Tuesday, Ginyu Wednesday, Jace Thursday, Raccoon Friday, and all of their events were available during the weekend. Birder was actually very good. He stacked defense on Super, gained 10% attack per key spheres obtained, and had a 50% chance to dodge in the first slot. Unfortunately, that dodge chance procced after he attacked, so he could get caught in the first slot. But bosses back then weren't hidden that many times, so it wasn't as bad as you would think. Guldo had a 30% chance of stunning on Super and reduced the attacked enemy attack and defense by 20% for 2 turns. So actually a pretty good utility unit, and a card you could genuinely bring into Super Battle Road. You needed some RNG for sure, but it was still doable. But bro, that defensive stat was awful. Like 6.1k defense on a Rainbow TUR. Even for a free-to-play TUR, that was bad. Like, very bad. Int Ginyu was the best one here for sure. He stacked attack on Super, had 3 key and 70% attack and defense when facing one enemy, or 50% damage reduction when facing multiple enemies. So best believe that this guy was an SBR beast. With a damage reduction, he could genuinely like take a hit there, something that not many units could at the time. And with an Icarus or Ruiz active, he was pretty much invincible. I actually used him to beat the Extreme in Super Road stage for the first time. Jace was actually pretty cracked too. He raised all allies attack by 20% on Super for 1 turn, gave extreme class allies 2 key and 20% attack, but most importantly, he was the first card ever to have a built-in Scalder. As long as you had this guy on rotation, you were able to see where the enemy super attacks were. This was just so useful in every event in the game, especially Super Battle Road. So even though he couldn't tank anything, he still had use there just because of that Scalder. Raccoon was also pretty good. He greatly lowered the enemy's defense on Super, had 80% defense at the start of turn, and gained 14% attack up to 70% per attack received. So him and Ginyu were actually the tanks of the team. And after taking a couple of hits, he could even dish out some decent damage. Not a bad card at all. Honestly, they were all decent and a must farm for every new player. Like, it was thanks to these guys that I actually managed to beat my first Dokkan event without like using any stones. Like, I forgot who said it, but I remember some YouTubers saying that these guys were must farms for newer players at the time. So I did just that, and it was truly life-changing. Like, I was finally able to play the game correctly, because bro, when I first started, it was just too overwhelming to like understand how good a card was and like which cards were good together. So having a free team where all the characters just perfectly linked together was just so good. A couple of days later, they released the first stage of Battlefield 2.0, or the Battlefield we know of today. It was basically the same thing as the first Battlefield. It's just that they removed the whole mini game and RNG. Now you could just build your teams like you wanted and directly challenge the bosses. But from what I could remember, it was still hell for new players because it just required too many units. units. So I still remember that one of the strats at the time, something that I actually still do to this day, was to use the Ginyu Force to clear the first stage, and then use your other monotype teams to clear the other stages. And if you were lucky, the type of the first stage was your weakest type, so you could just use your best team to beat the harder stage. Actually, now that I think about it, the 3rd year anniversary LRs were absolute monsters in Dokkan Battlefield. I think they were literally built for that event, since they could tank pretty well there. Just look at that.
Yeah, this is okay. That's okay. I'm glad they're up front tanking though. Even without the crazy buff, because they're not getting anything from the tech Angel Goku, I guarantee you they still tank a lot of this for pretty high. Well, not that. There you go. See, there you go. That's what I was looking for. This should still do a fair amount of damage. You still get crits off or not. Mostly just want them to be there to tank for the 4-digit numbers. You know what I mean? Like that's where it's really at. And they're still doing decent damage too. Yeah, see, that kind of tanking right there is what I need.
Nano ran LR Gogeta under 1 leader skill, and they were still able to tank decently well in the final stage while not even having a type advantage. And bro, that final stage was hard, bro. It wasn't easy. So this was very impressive at the time. That battlefield also introduced a new LR Tech Ginyu, who was insane, at least for a free-to-play player. He led the Ginyu Force category for 3 key and 100% HP attack and defense. Like sure, the category consisted of like 6 characters, but it was still crazy. He also greatly raised his attack by 50% on his 12 key, and raised extreme class allies attack by 30% for 1 turn on his 18 key. 2 very good super attack effects. He also gave 30% attack and defense to extreme class allies, and an additional 20% attack and defense to Ginyu Force units. So he gave in total 50% attack and defense to Ginyu Force characters. Like this was so insane. And obviously he also linked well with the other Ginyu Force units. That he was just so insane for a free-to-play player. And the crazy part is that they actually gave you 1 copy for free for rainbowing all of the free-to-play Ginyu Force units. So yeah, that was just crazy, bro. Crazy. Anyways, the anniversary ended with more top grossing rewards. Like, I don't even know how this anniversary managed to hit top grossing 3 times, but yeah, they gave everyone 2000 potential orbs of each type and 777 green gems, which from what I could remember didn't happen on global. Like, I don't think the global version hit top grossing 3 times, but the second top grossing rewards were definitely better. Like 30 character slot was for sure better than 777 green gems in the long run. Honestly, this was just an all-around trash anniversary, I'm not gonna lie to you, but it did bring back some memories. So I guess I had a lot more to say today. Anyways, if you've liked the video, you can always leave a like. It helps more than you can ever imagine. As for the next history video, it could be a while. I have like so many other videos that I have to get out first, but don't worry because I think that the next one will be worth the wait.